Discussion. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Dyke,
No.
Artino,
Yes.
Genesi,
Yes.
Shopter,
Yes.
Hardy,
Yes.
Crawford. Yes. Hartung.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is audience comments. Please step to the podium, state your name and address for the record. There is a 3-minute time limit.
Bruce Nick Harrison with First Energy. I think I addressed all of you a few months ago when I took over the position. Just wanted to address all of you briefly to make sure there wasn't any outstanding issues with Ohio Edison or First Energy that need to be made aware of, and then address. Nothing for any of you. Perfect. I brought some of these emergency responder cards. I know obviously a lot of you can call me for any issues, but it's also nice to have some additional numbers as well, so I'll just leave a stack of them here. So, like I said, if you need anything from me, always don't hesitate to give me a call at any time. So, happy to help. So, thanks.
Anybody else?
My name is Ted Terry, and I live at 9312 Mylan Road. I'm concerned about the beach down here and a break wall, about letting people just go out there when it's real bad weather like it was. We lost 2 young men, you know, and that's too many. And my thing is, idea is, why don't we have a police officer go down there and say the beach is closed today, put up signs, don't go in the water at all, because they don't get it. They just think, oh, I'm just gonna go a little ways, but all of a sudden they step in a hole and they chuck them out into the lake, they're dead, you know. In both cases that was. And everybody says, well, I can swim. I argued with a lady, she said, well, I can swim. And I said, no, you can't. If you fall in that lake with that riptide, it doesn't matter how good you can swim. You gotta know which way to go, you know, so you go parallel with the shore and then find your way in. But that takes a lot of experience. And 99% of people will fall in that water. On a northeast or any north wind or any big wind could get sucked out and never find their way back. I remember an incident not too many years ago. 4 young men, all in their 20s, dove in at Nickel Plate Beach, and they tried to save a lady that was in trouble. She got out, all 4 of them drowned. And all 4 of them were accomplished swimmers. 3 of them were lifeguards. And all 4 of those men died. What do we have to do? You know, it's just, we gotta do something. And that's, as far as I know, another person I talked to from Huron, that was, before that, there was 20-some, he said. Since I've been adding on since then, there's now 30 young men in the last 15 years that have died from getting in that water. And they're all of them.
30 seconds, Mr. Terry. 30 seconds.
Okay.
Jason Henners, 1130 Mudbrook Road. Ohio's open meetings law requires council's meeting minutes to be promptly prepared and accurately reflect the events of the meeting. Your own written council rules, section 121.01, Roman numeral 4, says the mayor shall then cause the journal of the preceding session to be read and disposed of, unless otherwise ordered by council. With regard to the minutes from May the 14th meeting that you approved tonight, the meeting where Mayor Hartung ordered police to arrest my wife for criticizing him, it has taken 8 weeks for the meeting minutes to be prepared and submitted. The version submitted does not accurately reflect the audio or video of the meeting, or even the correct sequence of events. Meeting minutes are required to be an accurate depiction of the meeting, not a self-serving document to further your personal agenda against my wife and me. And Mayor, if you are going to have a citizen arrested and accuse her of not following the unwritten rules of council, how do you not hold yourself accountable for not following your own written rules and deadlines? When I spoke to council on May 28th, I expressed how much Stacy and I love this community. We did then and we still do now. Regardless of what occurred 2 months ago, we know that the actions of Mr. Genesi targeting me and my religious practices and Mayor Hartung targeting my wife do not reflect the goodness within this community. There is a misconception among some that if someone raises concerns about their government, that they do not love their community. Nothing could be further from the truth. We are grateful for the work of our city employees and first responders. In fact, my mother-in-law, who is here, was a first responder for this city for 33 years. We also appreciate those who volunteer to make special events happen, be it the Chamber, the Rotary, our local churches, and the citizens who make a positive difference on their own. But we would fail in our duty as citizens if we didn't stand up against things that are wrong and unlawful. This community cannot thrive when vital information is withheld and citizens are prevented from fully knowing and participating in their government. The failure to be open, honest, and transparent is a continual issue which has cost you, the council and city administration, the trust of your residents over the last 2 years. You continue to believe citizens owe you blind trust and absolute deference. We don't. Mr. Genesi made a statement recently that being a council person is hard. It's only hard when you lose the trust of your constituents. Citizens have been forced to ask questions and make public records requests because you have not been forthcoming about information on important issues. The examples are numerous. I've addressed them before and will do so again. I can safely say that the solution is not hard. Citizens will never complain if you are too open, too honest, or too transparent. Finally, Mayor Hartung, since this is the first time you've been back since May 14th, let me say again what I and more than 20 other citizens said on May 28th. Your actions toward my wife were unconscionable. And what's even more so is that you have not refused to make it right. Thank you.
I'm Mary Murphy, and I live at 410 Seneca Avenue. So I appreciate the efforts of the council members to educate themselves regarding the Sunshine Laws for Ohio. The 2019 Sunshine Laws Manual was assembled by the Office of Public Records Unit led by Ohio's Attorney General Dave Yost. It was organized to be a one-stop resource on Ohio's open government laws, both so that we know our rights and so public servants know their obligations. In the foreword of this document, Mr. Yost indicates that one of his primary responsibilities as Attorney General is to promote accountability for those who serve Ohioans. He says, and I quote, "My office fulfills this duty in part by empowering citizens to become voluntary watchdogs through the use of a powerful tool, public records. As a former newspaper reporter and state auditor, I fully support government transparency and your right to know what goes on behind the scenes." The end of quote. So I thank you, council members, for your service. And I thank our citizens who have made public records requests in search of transparency in efforts to produce the best local government. The action taken by the City Council in response to Stacy and Jason Hinner's taking up this torch of being voluntary watchdogs has been discussed extensively at previous meetings. Unfortunately, several council members have not been here in attendance to hear. So I'm here tonight to continue to express support for their efforts in search of transparency. And Mayor, I disagree with your decision to remove Stacy from the May 14th meeting for representing our City Council in this way without their full approval, and for pursuing charges of obstructing official business against Stacy. So I would ask tonight that the council address two specific concerns. One, what is the status of the charges against Stacy and the estimated cost of hiring a special prosecutor for this case? Number two, as council members educated now in the Sunshine Laws, have there been violations in the way information has been communicated outside of public meetings through phone calls, texts, and emails to members of council, school board, or community members that do not meet the criteria established by these laws? What measures then are being made to assure compliance? Thank you.
I move that ordinance 2019-9 be placed on its third and final reading.
Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schopper.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Crawford. Yes. Hartung.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Genisi.
Yes.
Ordinance number 2019-9, an ordinance amending section 1121.04 definitions, section 1125.03 B3 general district, subsection F industrial developments of section 1126.05 planned development projects, section 1126.09 University Park planned industrial development project overlay zone, and enacting new 1126.17 regulations for industrial greenhouses of the planning and zoning code within the codified ordinances of the city of Huron to regulate industrial greenhouses and declaring an emergency.
Mr. White.
Mayor and council, it is the advice of the administration that this matter be delayed until the public hearing that's scheduled for July 23rd. At that point, it could be taken back up for a third and final vote. Just procedurally before if there's any other discussion, but as a technicality, we need to go through the public hearing first, and then we can address the third and final reading at that time. So again, our recommendation would be to postpone any action tonight until July 23rd.
Mr. Mayor, I move to table ordinance 2019-9.
Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Genisi.
Yes.
Schopper.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Crawford.
Yes.
Hartung.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is ordinance 2019-11. Mr. Hardy.
Mr. Mayor, I move that ordinance 2019-11 be placed on its second reading.
Very good. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Hardy.
Yes.
Crawford. Yes. Hartung.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Martino.
Yes.
Genisi.
Yes.
Schopper.
Yes.
Ms. Lang.
Ordinance number 2019-11, an ordinance amending the official zoning map of the city of Huron to reflect the rezoning of approximately 94.7 acres of land located at 1101 Rye Beach Road, parcel number 42-67003, from the current R1 single-family residential to B3 general business PUD, and to include the parcel in the planned industrial overlay zone and declaring an emergency.
Very good. Mr. White.
This follows and is a supportive measure to the previously tabled ordinance 2019-9. 2019-11 is before you on its second reading and should be passed with your approval on the 23rd. This essentially transferred the property which came into the community, the full 95.5 acres as R1 through the existing law. We're requesting to place this into the PUD B3, which allows the current variables being discussed within the zoning ordinance to be applied. All told, moving forward, when this is completed, and assuming there's an affirmative vote on the 23rd, the city will be having the authority to regulate light coming out of the greenhouses that are in existence and those that are planned for the future.
Very good. Any discussion on that? Very good. All right, moving into new business, resolution 2019-38. Mr. Shepherd.
Mr. Mayor, I move the three reading rule be suspended and resolution 2019-38 be placed on its first reading, please.
Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Schopper.
Yes.
Hardy.
Yes.
Crawford. Yes. Hartung.
Yes.
Dyke.
Yes.
Martino. Genisi.
Yes.
Resolution number 2019-38, a resolution authorizing the city manager on behalf of the city of Huron, Ohio, to support the request of St. Peter's School for the use of city streets, traffic control services, and placement of a banner in the median area advertising their 5K race and fun run to be held on Saturday, October 26, 2019.
Mr. White.
This is turning into an annual event and a part of our series of 5K runs throughout the community. Before you recommended for approval, we're looking forward to having another good successful race.
Any discussion? Mr. Genizzi?
You know, we had a discussion about the sign that I normally raised at this point during our economic development committee meeting. I think there were some good comments made. In fact, contrary to my thoughts were kind of an electronic sign, although the majority of the committee felt that something in a I'm going to say old-fashioned, help me with another word, say traditional sign that would just have a more a small town look to it and not a modern look to it. I think we'll go out and try to get some suggestions of how that can be done and bring that back eventually. So my comments aren't necessary.
Any other discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Shofter?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Hartung?
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
Martino?
Yes.
Genizzi?
Yes.
Very good. Next item on the agenda, 2019-39.
Mr. Mayor, I actually move that we table resolution 2019-39. We've had recent conversations. We need to firm up some information and finalize the details of costs associated with the replacement and so on. And so I'd actually like to move and table this resolution until we get through those final.
Very good. Any discussion on the motion?
I have some questions. How did we come up with the figure, the amount of money?
For implementation or ground tackle or?
To put the buoys,
Police Department.
police department?
Yes, sir.
I'd like some detail on that when we get to it.
Yeah, and if I could, based on some of the conversation that was held between the administration and some of the citizens who corresponded with you on the cost, I believe there was a misunderstanding that the bed tax was being expanded and that resources from that source were to be used to offset the cost. And when they understood that the bed tax had not been expanded, I should say, there was concern because this 4th of July weekend, in particular, Old Homestead, 201, those areas are teeming with, second-family homeowners and transient renters because of very compact neighborhood. And there was some desire on the behalf of those that I spoke with that that population group share in the cost of some of these items. So at that, because the correspondence is before you, kind of pushing back a little bit, we recommended to table that safety committee for further discussion. If there are things you'd like to discuss or have us look into along the way, please contact me.
And if I might, Sam, the safety committee meeting minutes, there are details where those costs were discussed and a number of hours, number of folks out on the boat deploying, that there is a calculation associated with that, and I do believe they are in past safety committee meeting minutes.
All right, motion is to table resolution 2019-39. Any other discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Crawford?
Yes.
Hartung?
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
Martino?
Yes.
Genizzi?
Yes.
Shofter?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Very good. Next item, 2019-40.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, before introduction, I'm going to leave the chambers during this discussion, since it involves them.
Mr. Artino.
Mayor, I move that three reading will be suspended, resolution 2019-40, replacement first reading.
Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Martino?
Yes.
Shofter?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Hartung?
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
Resolution number 2019-40, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a master agreement with Dynergy Energy Services East LLC, doing business as Dynergy Energy Services LLC, to provide electric generation supply and related services under the city's electric aggregation program.
Mr. White.
Mayor and council, if you just refer to the subject matter in the memo. This is a follow-up to previously authorized legislation which set a cap of 5 cents per kilowatt hour, which was based on the recommendation of our consultant. As you'll note, We did receive a 3-year fixed price through the competitive bidding process underneath that cap at 4.79 cents per kilowatt hour. That comes with a 3-year fixed rate and also a $60,000 grant for the provision over the life of the agreement and then payments of $20,000 per year. Utility customers enrolled can enroll or have the option to opt out, but this provides fixed pricing for that 3-year term and replaces an aggregation program that previously existed that ran for 3 successive periods of 3 years for a total of 9. But this is just a follow-up to our conversation that you had set a not to exceed cap of 5 cents, but the actual bids came in beneath what we had anticipated at 4.79.
Any discussion, questions? Mr. Dyke?
This comes up as a recommendation from whom? Was this Mike Spacek last
Yeah.
week?
It's Mr. Spacek, the finance director, and the administration that reviewed the bids. And this was the lowest and best bid that we received out of 3.
Thank you.
Any questions? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Martino?
Yes.
Shopter?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Hartson?
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
Next piece of legislation, resolution 2019-41. Mr. Hardy?
Mr. Mayor, I move that 3 reading will be suspended and resolution 2019-41 be placed on its first reading.
Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Hardy?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Hartson?
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
Martino?
Yes.
Genesi?
Yes.
Shopter?
Yes.
Resolution number 2019-41, a resolution authorizing and directing certain transfers among the various funds of the city.
Mr. White?
Mayor, Council, the summary form outlines these previously approved budgetary transfers are now being brought before you in real time as they're being executed. I'd recognize the finance director, Mrs. Weisgood, to provide further summary and answer any questions after.
Yeah, good evening, council members. This is, as Andy stated, this is a budgeted transfer, an annual recurring cash transfer to fund the police department's pension liability. Their police pension fund needs the transfer in to pay for their pension liability the rest of the year. Again, this was previously budgeted with the initial budget at the beginning of 2019.
Any discussion?
Just quickly, are the numbers correct on that? You're going from 87 to 59.
Yes, currently
Is that deficit balance?
there's currently a deficit balance, and that's why the request is coming in now. It was supposed to be a recurring transfer, and since I just took over, I took a look at all the cash balances, and this was at negative, so the transfer is necessary.
Any other discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Hardy? Crawford?
Yes.
Hartson?
Yes.
Dyke?
Yes.
Martino?
Yes.
Genesi?
Yes.
Shopter?
Yes.
Next item, city manager discussion.
Just to follow up to, I know there's a few audience comments. Terry, I didn't catch your last name, I'm sorry, but
Terry, T-E-R-R-Y.
Mr. Terry, I'd be happy to speak with you more. I appreciate your comments relative to the incident that just took place. We did talk about that somewhat in our safety committee and addressed, I think, some of the concerns that you had relayed. Ms. Murphy, I believe, are you still here? Sorry, I caught your inquiry relative to anyone who is aware of any breach of the sunshine laws, and I'm not aware of that. I realize this isn't the best format to have a conversation, but I'd be happy to speak with you about that in more appropriate fashion if you're able to meet with me. But in general, no, I'm not aware of any violations. Our records, whether they be individually, collective, are open with some minor restrictions that are legal. But if any citizen wishes to see communication from the city manager's office, our staff, finance department, our records are open to the public, and they should be provided to you with a request. But again, I'd be happy to speak with you more about that. Moving on to just a few updates, city manager's conversation. We had a meeting for our bond rating this morning. with Moody's Investor Services. They came down from Chicago, spent a few hours with the finance director, Mr. Spafford and our financial advisor, Mr. Cicina. There'll be a report that comes out next week, which will furnish and become made public. The long and short of it, the standard bond rating within the state of Ohio right now is somewhere around an AA1. We are graded as an AA3 at the high level. Corey, you can speak more to the specifics of the importance of that. We're on the cusp of making a jump to the next level that would provide even greater financial security for the city moving forward in the form of lower interest rates and long-term financing. So they were very impressed with our team, so I wanted to tip my cap to Mike and Corey for a job well done today, because I think that's going to pay huge dividends in the future. Additionally, if I get turned around, we have had several recruitments ongoing. Wanted to provide council with an update. We have now filled the position of the law director, the finance director, and we are closing in on selecting an executive assistant for the administration, which will be the third and final position. At that point, we'll rough out the balance of the structure with regard to the zoning administration as well. We'll have more resources over there. Working with some of the resources out of Amy's office in a response to Ms. Hartley, some of your questions relative to personnel administration within the city. Want to provide an update with some of the effort that the city's making. Amy's provided us with some examples of template updates for the employee handbook. That's something that has not been updated in a great deal of time. It's a pretty important thing that we take care of at this point in time, but also we're working on some organizational structures within this part of the year, getting into the second half with the organization kind of rounding itself out. We've got more resources now than we have in a while, and that should be beneficial. I also wanted to announce for council and anyone who's interested in the public, on Tuesday, July 16th, from 4 to 7 p.m. at the Erie County Commission Chambers. That's on the third floor at 2900 Columbus Avenue, the fairgrounds location, not the downtown location in Sandusky. Erie Regional Planning will be providing a presentation on the US 6 corridor study. This is a project that's been going on for over a year. It's a state of Ohio effort to try to realize some greater efficiencies of traffic moving from the Rye Beach interchanges north and then east to Cedar Point. And it includes anything from center turning lanes to intersection upgrades. There's an awful lot of different concepts, and it affects the city and the township primarily through that Rye Beach corridor, basically from the tracks north to the intersection. And if you recall, the center line of the road divides the city from the township. But the township, the city, Perkins Township, Erie County, and Sandusky all committed funds 2 years ago for this study. So that could be fairly impactful as you look at the new development that's ensuing throughout the corridor. And with the recent announcement of the sale of Solomon Creek Resort, it's pretty important. So if you have an opportunity to see some of the changes they're suggesting, that will be available. I received an email from a concerned citizen regarding Senate Bill 51. In that, there is a proposed expansion for special improvement districts. Special improvement districts, I mainly conceive of in a downtown district that doesn't have a lot of property development. And in lieu of the city or a community entity as a county putting resources in the form of new infrastructure to support new development and private investment, those taxes can be collected and then redistributed to pay off any infrastructure that was talked about. Senate Bill 51 includes an expansion of that to include shoreline projects that are targeted towards erosion because of the lake levels. And there has been expressed some interest from the community members, obviously along the coast, that would like to potentially seek that out. I've only had a chance to, it's a 90-page bill. I've looked at the legislative summary, and I'll provide that to council for your review, but I believe that there is some element for private associations to petition to have that formed. And I know we've all received inquiries from several neighborhoods along the lake, so I wanted to make you aware of that. And also, I appreciate the public's patience. I hope that you can hear us in the back row. There's supposedly a speaker system working. That was finalized today, and the recording system seems to be working much better as the minutes are able to be produced. and submitted to the website much quicker, but hopefully we'll come to utilize the system for better acoustics in the hallway when we have large gatherings. And that's all I had.
Last week, I think it was last week, I had a chance to attend planning and zoning, and I saw your email come out regarding Rob Moore.
Yes,
and
thanks for bringing that up.
And I was wondering, I would like to invite him, make a motion to invite him in to come and provide his presentation to the council members. I think it's a very viable option.
And I probably did have that, thank you for reminding me, that's written down right in front of me, and I forgot it, but, yeah, thanks, Joe. Mr. Moore, I believe, is the chair of the Huron Joint Port Authority. I provided the correspondence to council in his presentation. We had a good conversation about an economic development meeting. I think there was some support for the concept. I think for the benefit of the public, it's also due noting, the Economic Development Committee made a recommendation to support an initiative of the city in addition to this, to promote to the community the concepts that we've talked about at the site at an event to be held in September, to physically allow for the community members to come out onto the ConAgra site in the protected area where there's not debris, and have some discussion, and also invite the commercial real estate market to see the concept as well. But essentially, the Port Authority's project includes a provision of the Liberty Project, which would be scaled back to 1 acre and include a relationship with the United States Geological Survey. There has been continued expressed interest from USGS to locate within the city. Essentially, they would like to be in a 10-year federal lease that would be renewal for an additional 10 years for a total term of 20 years. The Port Authority has some financing mechanisms where it can borrow the money in the form of a revenue bond. It does not impact the city's debt. The proceeds from lease payments over that 20-year from the federal government, who is a very good, solid tenant, would retire of options we need to take care of relative to the legal description of the property. We have contacted the surveying company who had worked on this previously. There are 2 parcels that have not yet been transferred. That work is being done right now. It's essentially the state working with the city years ago to help offset some of their costs in the favor of the city receiving grant proceeds. We held on to some of the property. There were $792,000 of capital infrastructure dollars that we used as match, and the city didn't have to pay the $500,000 share of the Corp grant. But now it's time for the properties to return to one another. The state needs that for its asset database, but the city needs its piece because that's where the USGS is proposed to be located. And then the final piece in leading up to that presentation would be a dedication of the street so that we have a right-of-way defined for the placement of utilities, because part and parcel with the conversation with USGS will be the cost of the utility installation. But then, basic effort would be a smaller scale footprint of a previous concept to get some vertical action at the site and provide stimulus and additional activity. So if council's in line with Mr. Dyke's proposal, I can contact Mr. Moore and see if he's open to making that same presentation and answer your questions.
Motion by Mr. Dyke to have Mr. Moore come in and make a presentation. Any discussion on the motion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Dyke?
Yes.
Martino?
Yes.
Genesi?
Yes.
Schopter?
Yes.
Hardy?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Hartung?
Yes. Anything else?
Yep, and then you mentioned as far as the bond rating, and we're currently AA3. Are we trying to go to AA1? Is that the top?
No, it works. I believe, Corey, could you speak to this?
I'm not as familiar right now with it.
AA1 is the lowest. There's 3 series in each category. AAA would be the best. AA1 is the lowest tier in the AA, then it goes to AA2, then it goes to AA3. So we're at the top tier of the AA3, at AA3. And the ideal would be, when this report comes out, it'll discuss with you potentials and liabilities that they want to see secured before you make it to the next level. One of the things, also pension liabilities and the costs that you would pay over time.
Okay. And then another question, you mentioned executive assistant. Who does that help alleviate some of the workload from?
Twofold, and as we discussed it within the budget, if you recall, there's a request to transfer existing personnel. So Christine is slated to take a position within zoning administration to be the clerk. Mr. Green is running around kind of handling both ends of that right now. That would free up her position, and the executive assistant would come back into the city manager's office and support city manager staff and finance staff, but also split some of the conversation we have. When you come into the city hall right now, the first and only real place that you contact is the finance window. This would be an opportunity to kind of split income tax questions to utility questions to general administrative questions, or if somebody wants to get a meeting with council, we could split those into 4 distinct areas.
And lastly, I was copied on an email regarding the safety meeting and that there was gonna be talks about the Chaska speed limit, and I was wondering if there's any update providing that.
Yeah, if you want me to, I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
We had, Mr. Norton and his wife and Mr. Cook attended and kind of provided counsel and testimony as to what their concerns were. Again, it goes back to the holiday weekend, seems to be an exacerbation of the problem, the summer in general. They discussed the 15-mile-per-hour speed limits posted within the alleyways and 25-mile-per-hour posted throughout the remainder. There was some discussion of the potential for a traffic study, so that we could begin the process through the state of Ohio. So in addition to some effort on their part, they were gonna take some pictures to provide more of evidence for you to consider in terms of what the actual problem is. Mr. Green and I will work to put together a proposal for an engineering study that would be pretty telling in terms of what the state of Ohio will allow us to do. So at next meetings, maybe not the next meeting, but maybe the first meeting in August, we can have some additional discussion on that, where you have a proposal to consider on that traffic study.
Okay, there's a kind of an awkward double stop in that entrance, you know, like that to be looked at as far as from a safety standpoint.
Sure.
It's awkward, so I think that could provide some challenges in the future. And then lastly, Mr. Murphy brought up the question as far as the cost.
Oh, yes.
The city has, can we provide any insight regarding that?
Yes, we have the budget funds in place, not to exceed $15,000. It's allotted within the consultant special service line item within the law department. Mr. Corey reached out and received an estimate, and it's broad, but it was anywhere between $1,500 and $15,000. And it really depends on what happens, what transpires from this point forward. I think to date, we've expended $1,500.
Today, we just sent a check for about $3,600. So I know last meeting I stated that between $1,500 and $15,000 was the budget. After talking to the special prosecutor, that's the range that we were given. At worst case scenario, we're thinking $15,000, and to date we've expended about $3,600 of that.
Okay, moving on, mayor's discussion. I want to thank the police department and the fire department for their efforts this past weekend down at Nickel Plate Beach. The conditions were bad. We lost another young man in this community. And I happened to see one of the photos of the fireboat and the stuff they were doing. It's my understanding that the PD was able to get 2 people out of the water, and the fire department got 4. You know, just thank you, gentlemen, for what you do, putting your lives on the line and going out there in those kind of conditions. Appreciate what you do. Next thing I have is we received a letter from the Erie County Port Authority just reminding us about if we have new businesses coming in the area, to advise them for conduit financing. So I know we're talking to our local port too, but we also received this. That's all I have for the good of the order. Mr. Genesi.
A couple of weeks ago, or a couple of meetings ago, I brought up that the Ministerial Association had offered to do an opening prayer versus a moment of silence. I know we all received in our packet the requirements of what we would have to do. I realize I would like to have a discussion of that, or make a decision one way or the other. I've had people ask me what, whether they should be attending and do that, and I told them that we obviously, until we take some action, that isn't necessary.
We can put that on the work
That's all I have.
Mr. Artino.
Mr. Mayor, I would ask the law director for some direction on this. In an effort to help heal a wound that has been opened in this city, if I'm allowed to do this, I'd like to make a motion that council withdraws complaint against Ms. Henners and ask the prosecutor to drop the charges. Is that appropriate or not?
I'm not sure what you mean about council withdrawing its complaint against.
Well, didn't we file a complaint or initiate the action? City council?
It's my understanding that it was Mr. Hartung who was the complainant.
Okay. So is this legal for me to make this motion?
Well, I mean, charges have been filed against Mrs. Henners and are pending in the municipal court. The council cannot determine whether or not those charges proceed or not. It's up to the special.
Council can ask.
Council can make a suggestion, a request, or
Request.
something like that, but definitely couldn't make any affirmative statement that something will be dismissed or.
I totally understand. My motion is, can we ask the prosecutor?
Sure. I mean, I don't think that's illegal, but I think I've said this previously, it really has no legal effect because the special prosecutor under Ohio law is to exercise independent judgment in evaluating a case and by law has wide discretion in determining whether to even prosecute a case. So council can entertain the motion. It's not illegal to do that. I just, if passed, I'm not sure what effect it would have legally.
So your motion is?
To request the prosecutor.
Special prosecutor. We have a motion before you to ask the special prosecutor to drop the charges against Mrs. Henners from May 14th. Is that fair, Sam?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Any discussion? Would the clerk please call the roll?
Martino,
Yes.
Genesi,
Abstain?
Shofter,
No.
Hardy,
No.
Crawford, abstain. Hartung,
No.
Dyke.
Yes.
Mr. Knight?
Was there discussion today about the, accident at the safety
Yes.
committee meeting about the accident?
Yes.
Is there anything the safety committee can tell us about?
When it gets around to me, I was going to give a review of the safety committee meeting on top of what
Thank you.
Mr. White has already addressed.
I would like to give my condolences to the family of the gentleman that lost his life down there in Nickel Plate. My wife was down there playing volleyball and she had contacted me and said there was some emergency services trying to locate some people and just hearing what happened down there. And I ran down to the area where I live in our beach and then over to Homestead. And I think some of these people that don't understand or live in this area, they don't realize how strong these undercurrents are. And I don't know what the answer is, but I don't know how we can do it. It's not like we get out there and police everybody, but it's just sad that happened. And I do commend the police and the fire department on what they did. I did see those images as well. And I'll tell you what, I was even scared for them. So I'm glad nobody got hurt in that regard. But again, thank you guys. Thank you very much. So I'm interested to hear this stuff. So that's all I have. Thank you.
As we've alluded to, the safety committee did meet at 5:30 this evening and had several topics. We'll go ahead and start with the accident at Nickel Plate Beach. Several things have been mentioned that we don't know what that magic answer is. I agree with, I think the whole committee agrees with Mr. Dyke. Folks who don't live around here, who aren't familiar with Lake Erie and how the currents and how powerful our little lake can be, don't understand. They take it for granted. We talked in depth about potential informational signage at Nickel Plate, at what weather condition do we actually close the beach? It is such a detailed, difficult topic. The wind can stop blowing here, and we've got an extra 75 inches of water from 20 knot winds that blew for 4 hours previously. So what is the laydown time then? So I can assure the public and this council that the safety committee talked about it for a good, better than half of our meeting. It is on our radar. We're gonna take some interim steps. We've talked about this week to start with. We've got some decent weather conditions pending for the next day. Mr. White is aware that we're gonna have another northeast wind at some degree, not to what we had over the weekend on Thursday, so potentially, heads up, Nickel Plate Beach might be closed on Thursday. And we're just gonna take it on a day-to-day, case-by-case. The police department is involved in the conversation, the fire department is involved in the conversation, and we're looking for answers. Knowing full well, there's not the crystal ball, there's not a straight line how to handle this. Condolences to the families involved, the witnesses that watched it happen. Mr. Lobsinger, your team, the fire department, we have an incredible group of people that watch over us here. Another topic that was discussed at safety committee was a speed limit reduction in Chaska. That doesn't happen overnight for us to change speed limits on our city streets. Traffic studies need to be done, engineering studies need to be done. There are numbers, distances, concentration of the neighborhoods that all come into play. We are looking at that request. There was also a request to the safety committee to evaluate grass clippings blown onto city streets. Any type of yard waste cannot be blown onto our streets. Now the trick is it accidental, you know, the last swipe in the driveway? If someone goes out and cleans it up right away, is that still serious? I mean, again, a lot of what we talked about in the safety committee echoes back to common sense. But there is an ordinance on our books. We are not allowed to blow any type of yard waste into the streets. Keep that in mind, and we're gonna revisit that again. I think those were the three biggies. Mr. Shafter, Mr. Hartline, did I miss anything?
Could I just
Mr.
follow
White,
up on
yes.
that? I thought it was important at the initial portion of the meeting, there was a review of what actually happened
Yes.
on Sunday. And key things that we talked about were, number one, we staff and attendant at the parking lot to collect parking fees when in operation. On Sunday, because of the weather pattern, we weren't in operation. There's a private leased operation down there which rents kayaks and different equipment to go in the water. They were not open. We are still closed today, and we were closed yesterday. But we don't restrict access coming from the neighborhoods to the east, and there is not a gate apparatus which restricts traffic flow in and out. So although there was no operation today, there were a number of people out there. One of the things we had talked about would be the installation of some type of an apparatus that the city can control within a policy. Amy's office has provided a number of items for our review. If we sift through with the safety committee, policies are kind of slim in some of the communities we looked at throughout Ohio. Edgewater, which is part of the metro parks, has some provision in play, but in doing some research there, they don't work either all the time. So it's a very difficult issue to deal with, but for the short term, we may be looking at some type of restriction to the beach itself for vehicular traffic to start with until we have a more long-term policy hammered out.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Hardy.
Just echo the same thing, condolences to the family, and I know I talked to Captain Nash Monday morning, and there were 71 first responders that participated on Sunday, local, state, and federal level, so, well, you never want to have a loss of life like that. We did have a lot of people here to make sure after the fact that no more lives were lost. So thank you for it.
Mr. Shafter.
One consensus we came to in that discussion was, it seems that out-of-town visitors are more prone to be caught in conditions that, really compromise safety, and, awareness is word of mouth, and, a lot of other avenues too. And, hindsight's a great educator, but thanks to our safety forces, I mean, some of those pictures I saw were, police boat almost listed at 90 degrees, and somebody falling on the boat, thank God nobody got hurt, but still, the peril that they put themselves in each and every day, so I thank you also.
Is there an executive session requested?
No, Mayor.
None?